Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. I'm going to continue to read today, chapter 1, part 2, that is, of the book called The Lost Light by Alvin Kuhn, Kuhn. The title of the chapter is simply called Tragedy Dies in Laughter. And so this is my second installment for the day of a live broadcast. Hope you guys are doing okay. It's approximately, I guess, 6 o'clock here on the eastern coast of the United States. Another humid day, indeed. It's not that hot. It's just simply humid. But there's not much I can do about it, so that's why I'm inside. So we'll read to the end of the chapter here. So this is part 2 again, chapter 1. And so let's get into it. Ever thus have the archaic volumes been approached by Orientals and Western savants, it is next to unbelievable to discover what a rigid posture of predetermined estimate the scrutiny of antique writings have been undertaken by Western Christian scholars. Even when the evidence of sage wisdom was present under the eye, the relentless force of the fixation could never rest content until it had read the imputation of simpleness and cruelty into the text. If early literature did not manifestly read as follows, it had to be made to do so. In the inviolable presupposition in the case was that by no possibility could it be admitted that the ancients knew a modicum of what we know today. If it was to be granted that the seers of yore knew life, K-N-W, so knew life, K-E-N-W, truly and profoundly, it would be gall to modern intellectual pride, and the very walls of boasted modern superiority would be breached. The content of old scripts, mysticism, and haunting as it often appeared, had to be explained on the basis of primitive naivety of mind. But no right were the supposed aborigines of remote times entitled to the presumption of high knowledge or scientific envisionment of the world. No thesis found in modern view could account for the prevalence of developed culture in the early stages of the chart of progressive evolution as a present conceived. The assignment of puerile neoscience to the civilizations of even 3,000 and 4,000 years ago had to be vindicated at all costs. The rating of primitives for early men had to be maintained. Little wonder, then, that a literature skinned with such a blighting spirit never yielded its buried light. Supercilious contempt blinded the eyes of inquiry and closed the mind to all discovery. Obdurately refusing to admit the possibility of the presence of knowledge. No amount of search would reveal it. All the surer was inquiry doomed to failure in this field. When the most exalted genius the world ever knew had been at pains to disguise the outward appearance of that knowledge, it was only when at last the archaic writings were inspected with the eager spirit of genuine seeking and the reverent assurance of their holding precious minds, M-I-N-E-S, of instructions that the open sesame unlock a hoard of hidden wealth. If it shatters current orthodoxy in science or philosophy to establish the fact that archaic man possessed supernatural sapiency, then shattered they must be. The things cannot be obliterated. It is a fact that out of the night of antiquity looms the giant light of transcendental intelligence on the part of numerous sages at a period remote enough to be contemporary with the times, incorruptibly marked as primitive by historians. The ancients possessed books of such exalted spiritual and intellectual content as to lie yet beyond the comprehension of vaulted modern intelligence. Modern pride must face the situation. Quote, primitive, end quote, people already possess books which by no possibility could have been produced by quote primitive end quote mentality. Books which only sages could have written bespeak the presence of sages on the scene. And sages there were. Popular Academy theory must perforce revise its postulates in the case. It has stubbornly refused to admit the operation of a law of life in this situation, which it sees at work everywhere else in the realm of genetic procedure. Universal observation yields the truth that infant life is everywhere parented. The period of helpless infancy is safeguarded by parental oversight. The elder generation is at hand to protect, nurture, and instruct the young of every kind. Modern theory admits the prevalence of this rule everywhere, except, strangely, in the biological history of the human race as a unit. Granting the sway that is strangely in the biological history of the human race as a unit, granting the sway also the principle in the case of the individual, animal, or human, it has refused to predicate its governance over the early life of humanity as an entity. But the presence of Sapien's writings, the evidence of great lost arts, and the remains of sculptural surpassing presence achievements attest incontrovertibly the uniform working of the law of parenthood here as elsewhere. The human race was parented, you see. It was not left to struggle through its helpless infancy without guardianship. Ancient legends in the mass bears this out. Prehistorical lore teams with the stories of heroes and men of divine stature, demigods and sons of God who mingle with humanity and who left codes of laws and manuals of civilizations that manifest a mastery not possible of acquirement by primitives. Such as Hermes, Orpheus, Calamus, Zoroaster, Hammer, Ham Rubelier, Mani, Buddha, Lausius, Moses, and even Plato and Pythagoras hover in the dim light of remote legendary times as figures transcendent normal human stature and leaving behind writings that have been held up as the norm of perfect wisdom and conduct down the centuries. The laws of Manu have stood for ages as the prototype of all legal and social codes since formulated. Hermes and Orpheus taught the nations agriculture, writing, astronomy, language, religion, philosophy, and science. The sages, the saga runs. Hence, there's posit for the first time a natural and competent answer to the great and insistent question of authorship of primitive books overpassing ever-present capability. The authorship of the sages removed these books at once from the category of merely human speculation and places them securely in the place of authority and authenticity. They were the products not of early man's groping tendency to understand life, but of evolved men, sagacity, knowledge, and mature experience. On no other ground can their perennial durability and universal power be accounted for. The early races obviously received and treasured those documents with the same high reverence with which the human child receives the codes and rules of conduct, first handed down to it by his parents, who stand to it in loco dea. If the primitive world reverence is found wanting in certain groups together today, that is, it is due not so much to the fact that the books have proven of unsound merit, but to the failure to know what they actually say. It's not a problem. It simply is that they have merit, so to speak. People don't understand it. That's what they're saying. What he's saying here. They are uninterpreted to this moment. In other words, they don't understand it. You see, they could not be scorned if their intrinsic meaning was known. The republication of that lost meaning will restore the Bibles to universal veneration, but not as fiducious. Incidentally, all speculation of scholars as to the date of the personal authorship of the Bible books or other ancient documents of the kind must be declared to be pure and simple impertinence. Nobody knows or can know what hand first set these verses to paper or at what epoch. The books are of unknown antiquity. They were extended thousands of years BC. When they passed from oral impartation to written form, none can say. Hundreds of volumes proclaim Moses to have been the writer of the Pentateuch. Yet the last of the five books describe Moses' death and burial, and adds that not in a long cycle since his day, that is, quote, in parentheses here, estimated by scholars at 600 years or least. Hath there been found one like unto him in Western and piety in all of Israel? To ascribe any of the Bible books to any named writer is to trespass in the ground of folly. Indeed, it is possible to assert that in the common meaning of the term, they were never, quote, written, end quote, at all. No man sat down and composed them out of his thought or his knowledge. They were the outlines of a great universal tradition formulated by the accumulated wisdom of those first, quote, parents, end quote, or guardians, end quote, of infinite humanity. And like the thousands of lines of the great Homeric, that is, or Homer, poems which had been held purely in the memory of the Hellenistics for the 500 years, were finally committed by scribes to written form. Thus came those set formulations of systematic knowledge, cosmic data, and moral codes that have survived the test of time and still stand as a sacred commitments. Their material presence, their material presents, that is, the substantial truth of life and not primitive man's erratic guessing. And 1600 years of the most consecrated effort to study them has left their meaning still unrevealed. But the Western mind has begun to delve into the fathomless spiritual philosophies of the ancient East, the renaissance of Oriental thought, which was first quickened by Schopenhauer in Europe and by Emerson in America, is now sweeping Occidental religion consciousness to a new and lofty height of vision and uplift. The eminent psychologist, that is C.G. or Carl Jung, declares this movement to be the most significant taking place in the thought life of today. The philosophy that could give an expansive illumination to a brain like Emerson is providing a fount of light and incentive to millions more at present. The mass of literary disguise is being slowly lifted from the face of ancient scripture, and what has been gratuitously assumed to be the product of primitive naivety and ignorance is now seen to be the many-colored cloak recondile wisdom. Even so, apparently, a construction as the body of Greek myths, which has gained for its originators the imputed status of moronism or morons, bewildering and baffling the world for 2 millennia, is to be revealed as perhaps the most litigate presentment of philosophical truth ever given to the world. The light so long buried under a bushel of myths is beginning to shine through. Not only do they bear the impress of a genius able to portray mighty truth in fable and fiction, but they register an equal skill in artful concealments. Their employment of the craft of disguise has carried them so far beyond us that we have been gulted in taking the mask for the reality. The devisers of the myths were master dramatists and poets. With such deft touches did they weave the pattern of cosmic, mundane, spiritual, and physical truth through their meta narratives of gods and myths, merry maids, harpists, satyrs, centaurs, stags, and boars, labyrinths, rivers, trees, and stars, that not the most outlandish detail of their fabrication can be ignored without the loss of some signal link of meaning. Generations of scholars, that is, chained in the cave of orthodoxy with their backs to the light, have permanently scoffed at the idea that the myths might be fanciful portrayals of esoteric truth. And we have charged the most enlightened races in history, the Greeks, the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, with possessing the mentality of immature children. We accuse them of taking their 3-headed dogs, their fire-breathing dragons, their griffins, their naes, cyclops, Sirius, and Medusas for sure enough actualities. We were sure we could afford to laugh at the simpleness of a people who ascribed the summer drought to Valianton and losing control of the horses of Apollo's sun chariot. But modern presumption must brace itself for a rude jolt. When it shortly transpires that not 1 in 100 of our population will be able to grasp the involved and profound significance of the Pharathon myth, even when it has been clearly set forth. Face to face with what we could not understand in ancient literature, we assumed that the unintelligibility was due to the ancient unintelligence in the construction. That is, that it might be due to our unintelligence in the comprehension was unthinkable. We could only hold our ground of supposed enlightenment by shifting our ignorance to the ancients. If the myths made no sense to us, it was proof that there was no sense in them. But the myths made no sense to us. It was proof. But history is soon to revere a reverse judgment. You see, the comics in the case will be found to be modern, not ancient. Not they, but we will be adjusted to simple-minded children lacking insight. And we will see ourselves at last clowns and buffoons laughing and grinning in hideous mockery of a treasure the value of which we cannot grasp. Perhaps there will be wanting to us the powers of discernment needed to catch the grandeur of archaic system of philosophy under their covering of allegory. Habits of thought, postures of mind hostile to the presuppositions of the archaic knowledge will not easily adjust themselves to new views. The attempt at a full revelation of varied meaning will come with a shock to current theological vanity, to the pride of present knowledge, and to the complacency of the mechanism cast of modern thought. But the release of the hidden significance of the world scripture at this epoch may be destined to achieve our salvation from threatening social catastrophe. For the ancient wisdom held the prescription, I should say, for both individual sanity and a righteous social order. Folly flourished only by grace of its depositionation. The release of the Enlightenment potentiality held in the old books will challenge many traditional habitudes of mind and most of the lingering relics of theological inculcations. It will republish the postulates of ancient knowledge that has been lost or discredited and establish them once more as the principle of understanding for both the phenomenon of life and the deep lore of the scriptures. Some of these, long without the pale of orthodox acceptance, will strangely have been found corroborated by late scientific discovery. The philosophical method was that of deduction, since it conceived life as unfolding in the outer order, the pattern of things intimately involved in its inner heart. The conclusion reached by evolutionists in present studies is that, quote, evolution is centrifugal, developing outward from within the gene plasma, rather than centripetal, developing inward from without the gene plasma, end quote. In the words of Henry Fairfield Osborn, another late finding in that, quote, evolution is creational rather than variational. Variation of the species is the result of an original creative pattern within the genoplasm, which is there from the very beginning, end quote. And the third pronouncement demolishes completely the theories of materialism, affirming that, quote, evolution is pro-empirical rather than meta-empirical. The organs developing before there is any actual need for them rather than after the need for them to arise, end quote. Nature already carries in her womb the embryo of that which will come to form. Life works ahead to an end premeditated in the beginning, so that Aristotle's scheme of Entelechy, Entelechy, end quote, is a sound principle in philosophy. Plato told us 2,400 years ago that life is weaving on the field of manifestation, the design of archaic ideas in the cosmic mind. modern science and the clear interpretation of archaic philosophy of the past will together restore Plato to his seat on the throne of mind. The debate of teleological has been long and acrimonious. Negative conclusions have been fostered and apparently affirmed by the shortness of our perspective, the immensely extended outline of evolution envisioned by the cosmology of all will enable the mind to see the workings of design. Mr. Clarence Darwin asked skeptically if the Lisbon earthquake was designed. As well might a colony of ants ask if the destruction of their barrel as we spade our garden was designed. Neither to the citizens of Lisbon nor to the ants in the garden would the philosophy of design be conforming. I mean, not be conforming, but comforting, I should say. But we know that the digging was designed not to destroy the ant city, but to prepare the garden. So we may equally well know that the processes of world building were designed not to destroy Lisbon, but to adjust the Earth's crust properly about it. The design activities progressing in two different worlds happen to clash, man being no more intelligent about the plans of cosmic being than the ant about human intentions. And as man cannot change his larger larger designs always for the convenience of ants in certain situations, or indeed may not even be aware that his designs jeopardize their lives, so neither presumptuously can higher beings alter their operations for the temporary advantages of little man. Neither man nor nature has yet learned how to work on in evolution without the element of some sacrifice of life. It does not impugn design in the course of speed of an automobile that a child has been unfortunate enough to drift into its path. Centuries of world life have been lived all ori because the philosophical insight into the structure of archaic typical design has been dulled and obscured. The outlines of the patterns of evolutionary formulated in the beginning by a cosmic mind were known of old, but lost in a long interim. The world being the crystallized projection of a divine thought as form and history, the slow filling out of the lines of the pattern, what man can know of the structure of the original ideation or the great plan because of incontestable importance. This was the base and content of the ancient philosophy. It must be restored to knowledge. Fortunately, it has never been lost beyond recovery, merely lost out of common thought. It was safe even while unknown, being preserved in the amber of a subtle cryptology, that is. Ignorance came along and swept out of Kent the exoteric purport, but at the same time, it's perpetually the myths and allegories, believing them to be history. Deluded piety made a hash of the sense of the scriptures, yet all unwittingly saved them for the advance of a wiser age. On the one hand, materialism has ignored the spiritual nature and motivation of the universe. On the other, ecclesiastical zealotry, blinded by stupid literalism, has rendered religion ridiculous. The truth must combat untruth on both those fronts, rebutting a philosophy that denies the ideal frame of things and rebuking a centrical religiosism that distorts early truth into revolting irrationality. To redeem religion from enormity it is necessary to stigmatize its historical caricature, ecclesiasticalism. War must be declared on its falsities to vindicate its truth. Medieval and modern incrustation, excretism, and abnormities of 100 types must be brushed away. If the brilliance of the splendid original creation of supernatural geniuses is to shine forth again, Plato's theology and, quote, divine philosophy, end quote, must be vindicated. And that is the end of chapter 1 this evening. So we're going to end it there, as this work is simply called The Lost Light by Alvin Kuhn, and that was chapter 1. Alvin Boyd here is very direct here in what he sees. He's really very critical of what's happened, and rightly so, because we are all lost because simply as we've taken the scriptures itself as being literal. And the sad fact, we pay people to tell us this. We see these people as being, experts. But they're not experts, folks. They're deluded. Um, they believe in some kind of literalism. But I was on that path too, and gradually learning different things as I continue to break up what I call false perspectives on scriptures because of my past. And so many people think that the end of the world is coming. No, it's not the end of the world. It's basically, if I see it, is to do with the end of the Western civilization, so to speak. Although Western civilization can basically, as I'm reading here, Alvin Kuhn's work, can actually make a change in a positive direction. It may not be too late for that to take place, meaning simply is there's an opportunity to wise up, so to speak. So we're going to end here. Appreciate your attention. Appreciate you being here. And I wish you a good evening. And thank you for your attention tonight. You take care.